give you what you need. Oh no, no. You're misbehaving. Yeah, it's getting to me. It's never ending. You can give anything, so you can go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Yeah, so I can focus. I just need to focus on myself. Oh, you better go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Yeah, so I can focus. I just need to focus on myself. Yeah, so you can go, go, go. Go, 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 go. So I can focus. I just need to focus on myself. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You better go, go, go. Go, 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 go. So I can focus. I just need to focus on myself, baby, baby. Hear it on the phone. If you got something to say to me, then say it to my face. What it's all about, why you're bailing out. Think you owe me an apology. Just say it to my face. You're sorry. You're so sorry. You're so sorry. You're so sorry. Say it to my face. You're sorry. When I quit my job for you, even quit some friends for you, 'cause you couldn't stand it, me all independent, so you had to have me for yourself. That was when I trusted you, when I could add up 2 and 2, when you promised we'd be together, you, me, forever. Now there's nothing left to lose. And though I understand it's hard sometimes to make up your mind in these trying times, yeah, I just can't accept you leaving me when I'm overseas with the heart so heavy. Think that I deserve the truth for once, not a guilty tone, 'cause you're not alone, yeah. You said you wanna come home, but I know you don't. So this time I won't hear it all
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
There was some footage that came across my Twitter feed this weekend from Philly. It's not necessarily new, but it hadn't quite made national headlines. And so I wanted to point it out because there's also been some developments. You may or may not have seen the footage of a Philly officer deleting evidence from a man's phone, a black man who he had pulled over, who he drug out of the vehicle after the man was asking to talk to this officer's supervisor. And so not only did the cop pull him out of the vehicle, but in the process, the man drops his phone. And so the cop ends up picking it up and deleting the recording of the police stop from the brother's phone. Now, what we're hearing now is after, of course, community pressure, there has been an investigation on this officer, and it sounds like the officer is now facing charges. I want you guys to take a look at the footage of when this officer, you can see here, he's getting ready to pull him out the car. But then we also have some B-roll of when the cop just straight up goes in the phone and deletes the recording.
Wow.
You can see here. And you can see that the phone is cracked because it was dropped on the ground. Look, the officer goes into the phone, goes into the photo album, and deletes it. Deletes the recording.
Wow.
Now, we know how critical these videos can be in holding police accountable. That video right there could have been evidence for this man's case, and the cop just deleted it, right? And then we know the next line after that is what? Oh, I forgot to turn my body cam on. And now we have no evidence of this encounter right here, this man being drug out the vehicle. Take a listen to what the man had to say about the incident after he found out that the supervisor was aware of what was going on. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I hope he's definitely held accountable because, like I said, I'm nervous for me and my children.
And so, you guys, I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. This is definitely a different situation than what we've seen in some other police encounters. I am grateful that this man is safe, that his children are safe.
Yeah.
You know,
Brother
George,
Mac, you see the same thing I see?
Extremely concerned
go ahead,
about
my
the
brother.
state
Go
of
ahead.
policing in this nation.
I just wanted to see if everyone noticed the exact same thing I noticed first. The color of the hands that is carrying out the bidding of this police state and this white supremacist. That's a black hand in this video. That is from my best estimation, this is a black person who is this is a black cop who is deleting the video. Am I seeing this right? Or is the pigmentation on my screen messed up this morning? Brother Mac, what do you see?
Well, I won't necessarily go that. I'm not that clear that it is a black cop. I'm not clear. But what I am, and let's assume that it is a black cop, or let's assume it's not. Either way you look at it, this is why I look at these. You know, I wouldn't call him a cop. This is the quintessential example of a thug. Thug is anybody who commits a heinous crime. You know, this brother, and it appears that this thug was not only deleting the videos, but he may have been deleting things that were important to this brother. You know, and as you said, Sister Ford, if something were to go wrong, now there's no evidence, your body cam isn't turned on. This is the quintessential definition of a thug. And given that this happened back in March, and this guy is on administrative leave, on restricted duty, this is why we have such a distrust for law enforcement. And although we're seeing this now, this type of thuggish behavior is played out over and over and over again. And so, being to your point, even if this guy were a black cop, think about, why did we want Black folks to enter into law enforcement? It's
Mhm.
they can bring some type of understanding and sensitivity to us, because we've seen the distorted, racist, brutal treatment that we've gotten at the hands of others. But now when these brothers and sisters come into law enforcement, that brotherhood, that Kool-Aid that they drink,
Mm.
now takes over them to the point that they now have to, if they want to be accepted by their brethren, and trust and believe,
They
you're
do.
more like an ugly stepbrother to them. They care absolutely nothing for us. So for this type of behavior, not only the behavior of this thug cop, but the behavior of the thug supervisor and all of those
Yeah.
who are over him, because the moment that this footage is shown, he should have absolutely been fired.
Right.
And criminal charges. Where's the prosecutor now coming to bring charges against him for
Right.
destroying evidence?
Right.
acting in
Exactly.
that? There's absence, and this is why we're talking about the entire system being corrupt. Let's not just focus on the thug cop, but focus on his thug supervisor,
Yep.
focus on the thug prosecutors, focus on the thug judges, all of them, because this is about as open and shut of a case as one will get.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, and I think people always ask, you know, why do you have such an emphasis on police accountability throughout your work? And I think it's because when they're not killing us, they're doing this
Mm.
and they're getting away with it. And the only times when they're not getting away with it is when community is standing up, protesting, and applying pressure and saying that you have to do better. We deserve better. And so now Officer Tyree Burnett is facing charges of tampering with evidence, as
Right.
well as obstruction of justice. But had there not been public outcry, he would have just been on administrative duty. And
Yeah.
so we have to continue to put an emphasis on police accountability, because when you're not watching, they delete the evidence. And then what happened to Ronald Green, where
Yeah.
they can explicitly cover up the death of a Black man because of, quote unquote, the lack of evidence, or because of the evidence that they deleted. And so we cannot continue to turn a blind eye and act like we're not seeing these situations unfold.
Right.
The state of policing in America has eroded to a state that has no integrity, that has no regard for Black life. And so for me, I feel like it is dangerous to not continue to put an emphasis on police accountability.
But
Exactly.
But Sister Ford, not only is it their actions, but it's also their narrative that we have to stay vigilant about. Go back to where you are. Go back to where you are right now in Minnesota. Think about what the first narrative was in the murder of George Floyd.
That's it.
So when people are asking, why do we focus on this? Because this problem has permeated and dealt a severe blow to our community since its advent. This is a problem that we must stay focused on in order to change this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, you guys know I could continue to talk about this as so much of my work has centered around police accountability. We've interviewed more than 20 moms across more than a dozen states, and they say that very thing. Especially the way that the media is used to perpetuate the police narrative in a way that oftentimes criminalizes the victim and makes the family look like they have no credibility. And so it's one thing when you just hear one case, one family in one city, in one state, but having done extensive research on this issue and interviewing families from all across this country who are all having the same experience. This is not a city department issue. This is not a state issue. This is a national a national pandemic by itself.
Yes,
that absolutely needs to be turned on its head. And the reality of it is, you guys, we got to keep talking about this until something changes. And right now, we're still waiting for the federal government to pass the George Floyd Policing Act.
That's it. Correct.
So
Sister George, let me say this, Sister George. when we talk about the fact that it's apparent that Black lives don't matter, I think the reason why we're looking at a pandemic and law enforcement is because the law doesn't matter to them. These thugs believe that they are above the law, which is what they do.
Exactly right.
In addition to racism.
Thank you guys for watching, and stay around for more on the Benjamin Dixon Show. One thing that I've been exploring and covering here in Minnesota is the mounds. The mounds are across America. They are historically where indigenous people have buried their ancestors. And what I'm finding then is that developers will come through a lot of times these burial grounds, cemeteries, for lack of a better word. They are oftentimes on the highest point of the city, which tends to be a very great view of the city. And so it is attractive typically to developers to come in and develop homes or develop retail stores there. And so what I've learned is that the human remains of indigenous ancestors have been excavated by developers. They've been removed, dug up, so that we can construct streets and homes and places to shop, places to eat over cemeteries. I believe we have a clip. I want you guys to take a listen to a woman who is leading an effort here in Minnesota to reclaim and restore the sacred burial grounds of her ancestors.
It's been hard for me too, because I grew up on the east side, and even as a Native person, I brought my children to play at the playground. At the time, I didn't know that there were burial mounds all over this entire bluff, and that literally everywhere up here underneath the ground are the remains of our ancestors. I didn't know that. Indian Mounds Regional Park here is a place where a lot of the Dakota communities up and down the river would bring the bodies of their relatives to be interred here. We would put somebody's remains up on a scaffold until there were only bones that remained, and then they would be interred into the mounds. The place that you would want to bury your relatives is on some place high where they can be close to the stars, so they can find their way home along the Milky Way, and also so that they can watch over you. This being the highest point along this part of the Mississippi River naturally was an ideal place. Obviously, the way that this landscape has changed has been through colonization and what was best for the captains of industry along the Mississippi River. For the newly arrived colonizers, they thought this was the best view of the city, so a lot of our burial sites were plowed over and the mounds were destroyed to make room for houses so that people who were wealthy enough could buy those houses and have the best view of the river. I want to pay my respect.
So, Ben, I mean, when you think about people's homes are over the sacred burial grounds of indigenous ancestors, I mean, how much more disrespectful can you get?
You can't. And I think, see, this is part of the absurdity, right? There's no respect when we talk about greed. This is merely an inconvenience for these corporations to remove the remains of. So there's something that I hold and I cherish deeply, the land of my ancestors. Right. If as much as I can trace it being a survivor of slavery, right, we have that limitation. But that land, that means something because my ancestors are buried in that town. Now, you mean to tell me what reaction would you expect if you come in and you try to in their bones, you try to interrupt their. It's serious. But for corporations, it's merely a detour on their way to their quarterly profit margins.
And I mean, when you think about the indigenous community and all that they have had to endure since colonizers came here, I mean, just the very thought of interrupting someone who has been laid to rest. And, you know, when we came here telling them that they weren't civilized, yet here we are destroying cemeteries so that we can develop properties. You know, you look at in Colorado, you have a governor who went ahead and he revoked a bill that was passed in, I believe it was 1864, that said that people should kill Native Americans and they would be able to get away with it in order to take their property. This was a bill in 1864 that was passed in law. I do believe that we have some coverage on that as well. We can turn to that if we do. But it just continues to show how the fabric of this nation is so deeply engrossed in racism, and how much it I mean, how culturally incompetent we are. Take a look at this coverage coming out of Colorado.
And Governor Polis signs an executive order rescinding 2 former proclamations. They were put in place by Territorial Governor John Evans about 150 years ago, and they endangered the lives of Native Americans.
Governor Polis and Lieutenant Governor Diane Primavera held the ceremony to mark the signing of an executive order. It officially rescinded proclamations by Territorial Governor John Evans in the 1860s
that called for citizens to kill Native Americans and take their property. The order eventually led to the Sand Creek Massacre, an attack that left more than 200 Arapaho and Cheyenne Native American women and children dead.
Polis called it the righting of wrongs of the past. Colorado leaders were joined by members of the Southern Ute, Ute Mountain, Cheyenne, and Arapaho tribes and tribes across the country.
I just want to know why that was even enacted as a law in the first place.
Oh, yes. I mean, the fact that this was on the books for 157 years and it just got off the books, I think should be a clear testimony to the fact that systemic racism, all the way to the extent of murder and then pillaging and plundering the property of Native Americans, of indigenous populations, that really should show us very clearly what this country was built on and is sustained on to this day.
You know, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge that all of us are on the land of indigenous people. We see what's happening with the Line 3 in northern Minnesota being protested. It's violating treaty rights, yet and still you have corporations who are given a green light by government officials and also protected by local law enforcement agencies, despite the fact that they're violating treaties that were passed, and still so much stolen land that continues to get developed. It is just
water protectors, the water protectors and the pipelines that are crossing through the you know, it is just, it's not only the disrespect for these populations, it's also the disrespect that it's coupled with disrespect for the earth. You know, it's all compounded into one big absurdity.
Yeah, and when you look at environmental issues that we're facing right now, and you listen to our indigenous brothers and sisters, they really have the answer. The things that they have implemented through their culture traditionally, they respect the earth, they respect the water, they pay tribute to it, they give gratitude to it. I mean, all of the things that we really should be implementing in order to preserve the resources that we need to survive, right? Yet and still, their culture has been dismissed as being barbaric or you know, anything like that. Yet and still, if we listen to them and become culturally competent to some of their practices, I think we would be much better off.
Absolutely, Georgia, and I mean you've alluded to it a couple of times in this morning. the nerve of these barbarians to refer to our native comrades and colleagues and friends as uncivilized when we are trying to literally survive the barbarity of colonizers to this day.
And now, Ben, I know that you have been following some stories this morning as well.
Yeah, so we're taking a look at President Biden's speech before the UN, particularly one sentence towards the end that got a round of applause and a standing ovation, speaking to the fact that we are no longer engaged in a 20-year war in Afghanistan. But it's the sentiment about it that I want us to take a look at and consider for a moment. Let's run the clip.
For the first time in 20 years, the United States not at war. We've turned the page. All the unmatched strength, energy, and commitment, will, and resources of our nation are now fully and squarely focused on what's ahead of us, not what was behind. I know this. As we look ahead, we will lead. We will lead on all the greatest challenges of our time, from COVID to climate, peace and security, human dignity and human rights, but we will not go it alone. We will lead together with our allies and partners and in cooperation with all those who believe as we do.
Now, we'll get to the full segment in the next half hour during the Benjamin Dixon show. But, Georgia, it's the fact that, yeah, I do recognize, and I think Joe Biden should be applauded for pulling us out of Afghanistan. We know that it was problematic, and there are so many things that need to be answered for, but we all agree that the war needed to be ended, and so we salute him for that. That was a great decision. But let's be clear, the United States is still engaged across the globe, whether it be proxy wars, whether it be our still limited engagement with the war in Yemen by proxy of Saudi Arabia, and our continued relationship with that barbaric regime. I think we need to be clear that we're not at a state of peace. And while we can celebrate the end of the Afghanistan war, we have to be very sober about our engagements that this empire is still engaged in.
Well, and I think the fact that he's trying to portray it as though we rather are not engaged in war anymore. I really wonder, as the Biden administration, right, we're still at the front end of him being in office, but as we approach the end of his time in office, how will this be reflected upon? Will it be reflected upon as a victory? I think we're seeing him trying to take control of the narrative, trying to spin it and make it seem like it's better than what it really is. It's, you know, the typical thing that we see politicians do, the smoke and mirrors, right? But when you compare that to what Trump did, right? If you're not up there at that podium speaking facts, if you're not up there telling the truth, and you're able to just lie to the American people, I mean, really, you're no better than Trump.
Because if we extend that, and I think this is our responsibility is to call balls and strikes here. You know, when he's right, he's right. When he's wrong, he's wrong. And while there's nothing overall wrong with his speech, it was a fine speech, right? The particular details that matter to black folks in particular, right? Because there's still a war that's going on domestically. It's the war on the black community. We can't declare ourselves at a state of peace when the very weapons of our warfare here in the United States, in the streets of Ferguson and every small city, are literally the machines that we had overseas. And so while we still have empire outside of the United States of America, it is a direct line to the domestic terrorism that black people suffer at the hands of the police state internally.
Oh, absolutely. And having been out there and been on the ground covering some of those protests, having been a person who's been shot by the rubber bullets that they deploy on people who are out there exercising their First Amendment right, whether it's protesters or journalists, the tear gas, you know, all of these different weapons that are being deployed on American soil definitely makes you wonder if we are either in a civil war or if we've just normalized so much the militarized approach to dealing with American people that we no longer see it as war on American soil. But I mean, literally, that's what it is.
Exactly. Absolutely. And we have to reject, one of the things that we have to reject going forward is this idea that so long as we individually have peace, that we are at a state of peace. Our peace oftentimes has come at the expense of so many other people across the global south. And so we have to be sure as we listen to this language, we cannot allow ourselves to be culpable with the oppression of any people across this globe. And I think as Black people, we have to draw the line and say, yes, we applaud everything that you're doing right. But let's be very clear and very sober. The United States is still engaged in too many wars, either they be proxy, cold wars, silent wars, whatever wars. The United States imperialistic hand can be felt in every corner of this globe.
And before we're out of time, Ben, I do want to point out the fact that it was announced yesterday that COVID has officially surpassed the amount of deaths, making it the most deadliest pandemic in the U.S. ever. Prior to COVID, the 1918 flu was the deadliest. And so now with more than 675,000 people dead due to COVID-19, we have surpassed that number.
Yeah. And we have far greater technology, so much more information, everything that we needed to prevent that number from going over, I don't know, but 100,000. It was a novel coronavirus, and so we were not prepared for it. And so there were going to be people who died. But I think we could look at the totality of the fatality list and really understand that that's not a product of the lack of technology. That's a product of the ignorance of our moment and the incompetence of our leadership.
Absolutely poor leadership. You and I reflected on this in summer months before kids went back to school. And I felt like we definitely saw the train wreck coming. We called it out when Biden said that he was going to allow kids to go back to school. We knew as parents that it was a poor decision, that kids should have been able to continue doing distance learning. And here we are seeing more and more children not only getting sick, but dying as well.
Yeah, that's the thing, Georgia. I really, you and I did call it at the beginning of the middle of the summer as we were getting ready to go back to school. There was no reason anybody's children should have gone back to school, period. Because we see the results. We've seen so many teachers who have died. We've seen so many staffers who have died. And now we're seeing children who are dying. Precious at every age. It doesn't matter where they were elementary school or excited about high school. The stories that we're reading of the young people who have died because of the decisions of our incompetent leadership is enough to enrage you. But here we are at a moment, an inflection point. We simply cannot allow this level of absurdity to remain in power. We got to stand for ourselves here.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No, I ain't been right more than I've been wrong, and it still can't hurt me. No, it just can't hurt me. No. No, you just can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No. I know it's hard to be polite, and it's easy being petty. My mama used to tell me, gotta use you when he ready. Man, it's crazy how my brother said it could have been my cell. It's either prison or a grave, that's what everybody tell me. Man, life ain't a beach, it's a female dog. I'm staying 10 toes down, though I still might fall. Oh yeah, now I done came through, knocking pictures off your walls. Loving people who persecute you, it's still a tough be a light up on my path and a lamp under my feet. I know my faith strong, but my flesh still kinda weak. When that victory be looking like the verge of defeat, and I feel that disrespect, help me turn my other cheek and say sticks and stones may break my bone, but your words can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No, I ain't been right more than I've been wrong, and it still can't hurt me. No, it just can't hurt me. No.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, people.
No, you just can't hurt me. No,
good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. It's your boy DJ Exclusive is in the building. James Bo Williams is here. Hope y'all are having a good morning this morning, y'all. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, y'all. Come on in, get situated, get settled, get your coffee or tea, whatever it is you need. Get your morning started. More coming up next on the Benjamin Dixon. So, y'all, good morning.
It's crazy how my brother said it could have been my cell. It's either prison or a grave. That's what everybody tell me. Man, life ain't a beach, it's a female dog. I'm staying 10 toes down, though I still might fall. Oh yeah, now I done came through, knocking pictures off your walls. Loving people who persecute you, it's still a tough be a light up on my path and a lamp under my feet. I know my faith strong, but my flesh still kinda weak. When that victory be looking like the verge of defeat, and I feel that disrespect, help me turn my other cheek and say sticks and stones may break my bone, but your words can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No, I ain't been right more than I've been wrong, and it still can't hurt me.
Exactly.
No, it just can't hurt me. No. No, you just can't hurt me.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I see y'all. There we go. Now I see y'all, man. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, y'all. Come on in, come on in. Make sure that you hit that like button while you're waiting for Benjamin Dixon to return, man. Hit that like button. Go ahead, share, comment, hit all that good stuff, man. So you know what is going down now. Good morning, everybody.
But I stay shining. Yeah. They say the world would be a better place if we take out the hate. Stop all the hate right now. Yeah. Let's keep it real, it be better.
Lily, you are my sunshine, Lily. Thank you so much. Good morning, Lily. Good morning, everybody. Nicole Johnson, Environmental Coffee House. Good morning, Sun Queen Evergreen. Brother Tiger, good morning. Courtney, the SLP. Nat, hey. Roosevelt, good morning. Roosevelt, Republic of America. I got space.
No, you just can't hurt me.
TL, good morning. Laura, what's going on, Laura? Oh my gosh, I hope everything is okay, Laura. Prayers to you, sister, man. We hope everything is okay. Shout out to you, Laura, all right? Let us know that you're doing well, all right? Ear Hustler, good morning, good morning. Melody Dennis, good morning. Miss Sophia, good morning, Miss Sophia. Nicole Johnson, good morning. Susan Bradley, good morning. Miss Nuru, good morning, y'all. Good morning, everybody. Make sure that you stay tuned. And while we're waiting, have a slow jam moment. Sun Queen, good morning to you. Truth the Dragon, good morning.
Ooh, baby, it's like the world is on.
Brother Latif, good morning. Malia, good morning. Malia, good morning, baby girl. Afraid not, good morning. Sonny Wright, good morning. Brenda Johnson, good morning. Alicia Lucane, what's going on? Stephanie, what's going on? Sonny, good morning. Mara Sharice, what's going on, sisters? Good morning, everybody. Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned. We got more coming up next on the Benjamin Dixon Show, y'all. Y'all stay tuned. Good morning, y'all.
I got a brand new love. Take me away, girl.
Environmental Coffee House, good morning. I got my coffee over here on the side, and it is busting this morning.
I found an angel. Found an angel. Ooh, baby. People would travel far and wide just to see.
I just want to go get me like 3 other people and do some old Temptation songs while I'm in the front just singing. Good Good morning.
So high, yeah. I got a brand new love you. Take me away, girl, to a new level. It's 700. I found an angel.
My cousin. It is. Hey man, I just said that number group right there is Bubba and the Temptations. I got Dwayne, David, and B in on background. I'm right here in the front busting out. All right, y'all. It is time for time. Welcome back to the screen, my brother from another mother, y'all. Good morning again. It's time for more Benjamin Dixon Show, y'all. Good morning, y'all.
It's 700.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Robert Mcguire. He's a research director for Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, also known as CREW. Robert, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. Doing well.
The pleasure is ours. I follow the work of CREW on a regular basis. I follow them on social media, and you all seem to always be in the mix of some of the most critical fights as it pertains to justice, as it pertains to ethics in Washington, D.C. Could you just really quickly give the audience a snapshot of what it is that CREW does?
Sure. So CREW is a nonpartisan, nonprofit watchdog organization that uses investigations, policy advocacy, and legal actions to push for a more equitable, just, accountable, and open government. So we're filing FOIAs to get information for the public. We're pushing for better laws that allow the public to get the information that they need. And we're calling out elected officials who are acting in an unethical fashion.
So wherever you see unethical behavior, regardless of political party, you address it.
Absolutely.
Let's start with something I've seen you all cover, January 6th. And one of the things that we hear about the narrative of January 6th, or one of the subtexts of some of the conversations, is that even the investigation into it is itself partisan. But I've seen CREW, I've seen your organization, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. I've seen you all address it head on. What is the perspective of your organization and your work in particular around January 6th, but also as it pertains to you being a nonpartisan organization and the smoke and mirrors of trying to reduce what happened on January 6th to mere politics versus some structural or ethical issues?
Sure, absolutely. You know, the first thing I would say is that there's nothing partisan about wanting to know everything that we can possibly know about an attack on one of the most sacred spaces in our democracy. This was both an attack on the physical space there and an attack on our democracy, and that they were trying to overthrow a democratic election. And so to the extent that there is one party right now whose elected officials are to a large extent beholden to the person that sort of was the ringleader in bringing about this attack on the Capitol. Americans by and large can see that it is important, it is critical for us to get the answers of what happened and to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. And so there's nothing, we are not doing it because adherence to a Republican president attacked the Capitol. We're doing it because an angry mob attacked the Capitol. It doesn't matter who they were supporting. It matters that they were trying to overthrow a free and fair election. That the Department of Homeland Security said was the freest, fairest, and most secure election in American history.
So what are the findings of your research over there at Crew as it pertains specifically to January 6th? Where is the breakdown in ethics, in who needs to be held responsible? And, because we discuss this a lot in the media, and it's really easy for us to point to Trumpism, the Donald Trump supporters, or the thin blue line, or all the other components. But where have your freedom of information requests and all of your research, where has it pointed your focus in terms of what happened on January 6th? Help us to understand what happened.
Sure. So as soon as, the dust settled after the attack, we realized we needed to gather as much information as we possibly could. So, we set about filing FOIAs, some of which are going to take a while. I mean, some of this is a long process, but we have already found that the Secret Service, for example, was downplaying the prospect of violence that day. We have found that there were warnings internally at various departments that this kind of violence was likely. And so this kind of thing is starting to sort out, and we're starting to see that there was a reticence on the part of those who should have been protecting the Capitol to actually ramp up defenses. The other thing that we've done is we've filed criminal complaints against President Trump, against Mark Meadows, his chief of staff at the time, against Assistant Attorney General who was also pushing the big lie, trying to help President Trump overthrow the election. And so we're trying to get those investigations started at the FBI and Department of Justice. And then lastly, we are tracking corporate contributions to the Sedition Caucus. This is the 147 members of Congress who voted not to certify the election. And the reason that we're doing that is that, unfortunately, one of the most powerful industry or sectors or political groups, I should say, in Washington are corporations. They give the most money. They have a lot of power, and unfortunately, that's the way our system is set up. And as soon as the days after January 6th, we started seeing companies say, "We're not going to give money to these 147 members who voted not to certify the election." And we knew that if somebody wasn't there to track this, that those companies were going to start quietly giving again. And we were going to let that happen. We were going to say, if you're going to give, you're going to be called out for it.
I have to interrupt you there because I did not see that turn coming, but I should have. You mean to tell me that in the wake of January 6th, all of the corporations that said that they were no longer going to give money to these particular Congress people and senators, would you call them the Sedition Caucus? I think that's a brilliant way of phrasing it. They said they were never going to give money to these people again, and you mean some of them have already started, and it hasn't even been 10 months yet.
Yes, absolutely. Some of them had started giving just weeks after the insurrection. And some of these are household names. I mean, Toyota has given to dozens of members of the Sedition Caucus. We're talking Boeing, General Motors, a number of companies that are household names. And I should say we have a tracker up on our website that is updated every single day showing these companies. And it's sort of a doubly useful tool for us because it also illustrates the fact that these corporations are beholden to members of Congress. Even after an attack on our democracy, they feel that they have to keep giving money to members of Congress who sit on certain committees because that's how they get a seat at the table. And this is sort of the core issue of the way that money in politics works in America, is that if you have enough money to give large campaign contributions, you have enough money to get a seat at the table. And, the old saying goes that if you don't have a seat at the table, then that means you're on the menu, and the rest of us are on the menu. And so that's why this project is so important, is that it allows us to, on the one hand, try to exert some sort of accountability, but on the other, to illustrate the sort of the pernicious, corrupting way that money in politics works in America.
Wow. I just think that writers from the past, philosophers, great literary giants, would laugh at how easily they could write the tragedy of the American empire being bought and sold by the highest bidder, because it is kind of Shakespearean how ridiculous our country has been. I'm looking at, I went to your website. You said the tracker was up there. I'm already on your website. And here's a graphic that I want to read to the audience so that they can have an idea of what's happening, and especially what you all do over at Crew. Total corporate and industry spending on Sedition Caucus members, $10,459,971 in corporate or industry money has been given to Sedition Caucus members or committees and allied committees. And then 467 corporations and industry groups, political action committees, have given to Sedition Caucus members, and 138, this was the one, 138 of the 147 members of the Sedition Caucus have reported receiving corporate or industry money since January 6, 2021. So basically, whereas I always assumed that these corporations held all of the control because of the money that they've given, you're saying it's also reciprocal. The relationship of control is also kind of reciprocal in the sense that they are now beholden to these politicians as well.
Right. It certainly, it goes both ways. You know, so the companies feel that they have to give this money, and on the flip sides, members of Congress, there are certain members of Congress who get half or even up to 75%, 80, 90% of their money from corporate PACs. You know, there was a member at one point who, as more and more companies started making commitments not to give, he threatened to make an enemies list, basically saying, it's sort of, you know, saying the quiet part out loud that, you know, your corporate contributions get you in the door with my office and my people. And if you're going to make a pledge not to give, then you're going to be on my enemies list and you're not going to get in the door. You know, there's always been this sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge that, no, of course, these corporate contributions don't influence me in any way. When, you know, you have instances like this where the members are essentially saying out loud, yeah, that's what gets you in the door. And if you're not going to do it, you're going to be on my enemies list.
Wow. I'm looking at this list, and thank you to you and the team over at Crew. I would not have known that Google, Alphabet, is part of this group of corporations that have given post January 6th. You have Boeing, Koch Industries. Obviously, I would definitely expect the Koch brothers, or the industries rather, to be a part of this. Lockheed Martin, the military industrial complex. You mentioned Toyota, General Motors, Walmart. I mean, everything. UPS, Aflac. As adorable as their commercials are, they're in this group too. Man, what do we do? What is the approach here? Because what we see around us is almost a consolidation around the very path that is necessary to destroy humanity. But we're set on that path pretty convincingly. Like we're literally headed towards disaster when you think about climate change, when you think about COVID-19, and you think about the insurrection and terrorist event of January 6th. What do we do when some of the top players in our society, Google, Alphabet, Aflac, all these, they are on the wrong side of this particular issue? And of course, we know that some corporations want to keep things the way they are. My question is, in your thinking, in your research over there, Crew, when you guys put your heads together, how do we survive this natural propensity to catapult humanity to destruction when we're fighting against like major corporations and the rulers of our country?
So it's not an easy fight. That is for sure. But what I would say is that, one, I would point to something else that's on the tracker, that despite the companies that have given, some of whom pledged not to give and gave anyway, there are a lot who are keeping their pledge. So there's that. There are a lot of companies that are not giving. Some companies even shut down their PACs entirely. So there is good news there. The other is, I would point out, as polarized as we are as a country right now, one thing we agree on is the fact that there needs to be more regulation of money in politics. This is Republicans, Democrats, once you get outside of Washington. So the problem is the fact that it's polarized in Washington. It's in the halls of Congress that this is a partisan issue. And so if we can harness some of that bipartisanship that's outside of Washington to say, we're fed up with this. We are done with this outsized influence of corporate entities that, exist solely for the purposes of benefiting their shareholders. We want to limit their influence in the system. Then we can start to make changes. And there are plenty of good changes that could be made to the campaign finance system. There are bills out right now that are being discussed that could help increase the voice of regular Americans and rein in the power and influence of corporations.
Robert, we're already out of time, and I wanted to talk about at least two more subjects with you. Hopefully we can have you back. But thank you for drawing those connecting strands and the dots between January 6th and corporate money in our politics, because I had not considered that was going on right underneath our noses. Robert Mcguire, Research Director, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Joining me now is Rachel Kahn and Brandon Buchanan. They are members of Democratic Socialists of America. It's an organization that I don't think I've had an opportunity to talk about a lot in recent months, because so much has been going on the political stage internationally as well as domestically. But I have followed DSA almost since the reemergence. And before we go too deep, and to discuss why I have the two of you here, particularly about the race that's happening here in Atlanta, the Atlanta chapter of Democratic Socialists of America. We could discuss all that in a minute. But could one of the two of you, and we can start with you, Rachel, and Brandon, you jump in there, help the people understand really quickly why DSA is there and what it is?
Sure. Yeah. So DSA really started picking up during the 2016 Bernie campaign. And I think it was because they happen to sort of have exactly the right aligned values and sort of political platforms to merge perfectly with this sort of existing energy around Bernie Sanders and his campaign. Then, from there, we've just sort of seen all these ballooning numbers. And actually, it's been a pretty contentious point to try and figure out, which parts of our platform we're going to build on and act on, and sort of what DSA is going to be. So I think what we have been before now is a primarily electoral organization. And the conversation we're currently having internally is what else we're going to be,
Brandon, I want you to jump in there. Tell us more about DSA from the perspective of the things that you all are fighting for, and why, if somebody hears the word socialist, Democratic Socialists of America, why it's absolutely nothing to be afraid of, despite the amount of red baiting and fear mongering that's around the word socialism in this country.
You've got to remember that. You've got to remember that right now we live inside a system where not only are we dealing with corruption in the mayor's office, corruption in city council, we also deal with corruption in our activist spaces. Y'all can make up a list of people who get on here and get on Twitter and clout chase around on y'all, get on Insta, clout chase around on y'all. I led this chapter during the uprising. I went out there and there were people who were gunned down there next to grieving people and take their snapshot and then dip out. Atlanta DSA is member run, funded, led, supported. Everything we do is public. So if you are somebody who's been working inside, let's say the Democratic Party, let's say you've been following your favorite Twitter activists and you realize, hey, what are my means to keep this person, this movement honest? Atlanta DSA is a really good platform to do that. We've got 1,300 members, and what we do is what you choose to do when you're here. The mission, when you look at it, it's a very broad mission. So there are, each chapter has got its own agenda. There are some chapters that just call and say, hey, can you call your congressperson about the PRO Act? There are others that help set up cooperatives. that do mutual aid, that help Black businesses. So this Atlanta DSA, it's the largest chapter of this organization in the Southeast. Yearly elections happen once a year, and the steering committee is a little bit like the Supreme Court. They're going to be deciding what our priorities are for the next year. And, you know, as we grow, what we do is completely up to the members, what the rule set is, where the power is centered. So we try to have a pro-Black, anti-imperialist, anti-racist platform. And we try to draw that not just in our words and our values, because you're dealing with an organization that lives up to all those values, or at least tries to, but we put it through hopefully in our priorities and in what we do. And hopefully everything we do lives up to the values of, you know, centering the marginalized, giving the oppressed leadership of what they do, passing the microphone and making sure, hey, if you've got, let's face it, all these Bernie Sanders supporters, disproportionately white, wealthy group, that what we're doing is very centered on not just, you know, helping the people advocate for themselves, but helping them survive this moment and claim leadership for themselves and know that they're worth a damn. That's how you build a movement of any kind. And that's what we're trying to do here in the ATL.
Hey, shout out ATL Georgia in the house. Listen, listen, let me tell y'all something. When I came to Atlanta and I joined, I became a member, but I you know me, I didn't.
You were a member. We saw you on the road. You were like, hey, Ben is on here. We didn't follow up with you, but we saw you.
I didn't do my due diligence of attending. But
well, and you know, the funniest part is I didn't even realize I had your number there until I already had your number. So
there you go. See, y'all have my information. And the reason I joined is because I saw DSA through the 2016, and we're going to come to the Atlanta chapter specifically because it's a national organization. I did not know the Atlanta chapter was the biggest in the Southeast. I did not know we had 1,300 members in the chapter that I have to renew my membership in. I will get that done expeditiously. But what the reason I am still an ardent supporter of DSA, even though I have to renew my membership, is because of the things that y'all fight for. They're literally the same things that I'm fighting for every single day, not only on this show, but in my real life. Like in real life instances, I'm fighting for Medicare for all, mainly because I need Medicare for all. You know what I mean? Like, but putting all aside, you know, whatever the flash and glitz and glamour of the Benjamin Dixon show, like I'm an entrepreneur out here. I got to get some health insurance, and it's costing an arm and a leg when we should not have a system, Rachel, that allows for people to profit off the sickness and the suffering of people in hospitals. Talk about your platform as you all are running locally here, and how you're going to address some of those material issues. Like, you know, you're not empowered to change it, but I know this is something that you're obviously fighting for. Talk about those material things you're fighting for.
So first, I really want to emphasize that we prefer like a kitchen sink holistic approach to our organizing. So I'm going to say a whole bunch of things, but they're not necessarily in order of importance or even ranked like that to begin with. Capitalism is a really big system, and profit motive has created, you know, if I want to use like, I guess, executive designer speak, pain points all throughout the economy. And so, you know, what we have is like when profit motive intersects with medical care, we have private health insurance and the health insurance crisis and, you know, the medical crises we're seeing right now, not just in terms of COVID, but in terms of, you know, medical debt being the number one source or number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States. When we see it intersect with housing, we see, you know, homelessness, and we see, you know, retaliatory landlords, and we see evictions, and we see people whose, you know, physical well-being depends upon their ability to get an income, right? When it intersects with education, we end up having weird publisher parish stuff going on in the academy that undermines the reliability and trust of like science itself. And all of these things holistically create problems. What we want to do in the immediate future about these problems is create more sort of low investment opportunities for people to start participating. And a lot of those opportunities are going to be things like solidarity rides, you know, or delivering food to people, or, canvassing or phone banking or things that you can sort of pick up and do once and then come back to later if you want to, or just do it, the one time. And if it doesn't work for you, it's no big deal. Another thing we really want to be doing is creating sort of neutral, but inherently pro-social and constructive projects in our communities. So one of my co-slate candidates, Will Harris, who ran for the Georgia State House, and I want to say District 76, down in Fayetteville and Griffin and Peachtree City, that sort of area down south of the perimeter. He in particular is starting a lot of community gardens out there because people have lots of space. And it's the kind of thing where you can get somebody who's kind of normie and kind of lib to show up and participate and create positive associations, with these organizers, with this kind of ideology, right? And in working together and building these things together, we are forging communities. The long-term goal of that, or I guess really the long-term goal of that is overthrowing capitalism. The intermediate goal there is to create opportunities for community self-empowerment and material emancipation from capitalism. My belief, and I think this is a shared belief among really anybody who's a Marxist or who is influenced by Marx, is that the primary barriers to organizing are not ideological but material. So it's not that people don't understand capitalism sucks. It's that they don't feel safe talking about going on strike because if they lose their job, they lose their house.
That's right. That's right.
And we don't have safety. We don't have support systems for those kinds of things. So in addition to the sort of political campaigns we're already doing, like we see, sort of on the screen over there, or wait, I guess on the screen over there next to me, it's important, and it's very important for recruiting, and it's very important for changing national narrative. But in terms of actually building material power on the ground, we are trying to take a much more community-oriented approach.
Approach, because there's a when see, Sister Rachel and I, we talk offline because
oh my gosh,
she is like she's like a philosophical guru, and I love just debating with her and listening to her. But when we start dropping Marx in our community, not because we don't understand Marx, we've read Marx, but there's been so much committed to making people fearful of anything other than capitalism that the propaganda is even in our community. So when I hear you saying making this a community approach, it's absolutely one I sign off on. How do you, Brandon, how do you see breaking through that barrier of all of the fear mongering that's been put around things that are decidedly good? Rachel, I just to dovetail, you said everybody knows capitalism sucks. Yeah,
it's right, like on the shirt.
But with the way we've been propagandized, Brandon, how many people are really ready to make that conscious decision? And how is the Atlanta chapter of DSA addressing that from a community level?
Are we allowed to cuss on this show?
We'll bleep it. Go for it.
Everybody hates the police around here in Atlanta, dude. You can go around and talk about any of these issues, and it's like being the ice cream man. If you go through West Atlanta, and you can be Latino, like Rogelio Arcilla, he's running in West End. You know what part of town that is, by the Kroger, by the Popeyes. He's running to represent that part. And y'all know that's a black as hell part of town. But when he goes and he says, hey, we don't need more cops. Hey, remember the uprising last year. Hey, remember my parents were raised in poverty just like you. Hey, I had to be the first one out in my family too. All that stuff, people connect with that. And the word socialism does not bug them as much as y'all think. Honestly, the people who are worried about that are the ones who are already plugged into MSNBC and are living comfortably in their 50s plus, and we've got to go and we got to canvas and knock on doors, and we can talk about how we reach those people too, door to door. But
come on, somebody,
when we're talking about just how do we tell people about these issues? Last year we did people's bailout campaign. Hey, who wants $2,000? Who believes that these politicians are going to deliver their promises? Everybody's engaged with them, and they'll join any organization that they see that's up here fighting it, because there's not enough of them that are out here doing it and even saying what the people want to hear.
And okay, so now let's get to the race specifically, because these are the reasons why I always, no matter over the last 5 years, I have consistently trusted and observed the DSA not only brand, but what you guys do. I do remember the Break Light campaign here in Atlanta to make sure that people aren't getting pulled over by the police. DSA did a
Mutual
campaign.
Aid Committee, rest in peace.
Yeah,
You know-
we're the only chapter in the Southeast that doesn't have a mutual aid committee anymore. We got to boot that back up too.
So here we are. Let's talk about the Atlanta chapter specifically. You all have a slate that is running, and everyone has listened to your energy, your wisdom, and your passion. Tell us why this slate should be the one leading the Atlanta chapter of DSA.
Well, for one, we actually have a plan for how we're going to do the things everybody says they want. I have not seen any other platform documents even remotely as comprehensive or well thought out as ours. I have seen a lot of people talking about all of these things that we all agree on and, you know, can run around like the ice cream man, but I haven't seen a single person show up with vegetables behind it, you know? And I think we don't just have ice cream, we have the fruits and the veggies and the actual nourishment. You know, we're not here to just say friendly aphorisms like love is love and Black Lives Matter. And in this house, we believe that Israel is a real state. Like, you know, sorry, I'm, to be clear, Jewish and anti-Zionist. It's possible we exist.
Thank you for that disclaimer before you ran our show headlong into the
I know. No, I never make jokes about Israel without immediately saying I'm directly descended from Holocaust survivors, because otherwise it's like, what?
Brandon,
you can't say that.
You're sitting up here in your official acceptance speech, throwing all these. Hey, listen, you can go there. We're not going to go there. I'm going to keep it at this level.
I mean, but you know, even right now, one of DSA's leaders is Palestinian, right? Like, these are real, serious problems in the world, and we should take an internationalist approach and care. And I'm like doing jokes or whatever, but like I do really believe, like, you know, to keep these things in mind at all times. But also, you know, the core point I'm making is we're not just here to do the aphorisms, right? We're here to really actually show up for people materially. And that means, you know, money, rides, caregiving, like taking care of each other in the way that like churches used to, but with way less culty stuff.
But I'm really curious as to something that you were saying, Rachel, as it pertains to the difference between people who just throw out the aphorisms versus the people who really want to get stuff done. Tell me, just generally speaking, and you guys get the last word, your earnest belief, because I think this is what it's going to come down to. I feel your energy, Rachel. Brandon, I feel your energy. Help us to understand why you have this earnest belief in this chapter and in this slate, and even in the whole organization. What was it for you that said that this is the organization and this is the slate that you need to go all in for to make that kind of material radical change that you're talking about making? I want to start with you, Brandon, and then Rachel, and then you guys get the last word on why they should vote for you.
Well, I've been working and organizing around those people for like a couple of years. And everything that happens inside the chapter happens not because of leadership. It happens because people volunteer and choose to do it and make it their priority. This Cop City campaign, it wasn't just Atlanta DSA. It was groups like Community Movement Builders, their affiliate group that came through here and did so much of, you know, in-state Atlanta, who's been doing really good webinars and services. Some of the core organizers at Dark. We've already seen that people in Atlanta, and we've got the map, are willing to travel to, you know, across town, across those lines where people ain't usually going, to start like building a power structure that can, in our own way, compete with city council, even if it's one seat. And what that power structure does is very important. And since we've seen that result, and we've seen our own membership say, hey, we can go out here and do flyering, which, by the way, I was talking about doing a year ago, but anyway, now that we kind of see that, we want to make sure that, hey, you guys are building consciously a power structure in the city of Atlanta with your demographic. Make sure that it's a pro-Black power structure. Make sure that it's a power structure that is doing direct service. Make sure that it's not just a power structure where we're enlisting foot soldiers to call city council and get left on red, but that we are really participating and building in the community. And when you do that and you tell people you're doing that, they will join and help enrich the movement that you are trying to build. So that's what we're trying to do. And we've got a group, but we've got large support inside the organization because we've been here. We're veterans, former at-large officers. Rachel's been a grievance officer. We already
I was a delegate. We had lots of delegates who got elected. We've done a lot. We show up, you know, and we're invested, and people can tell.
Ready on day one, all of that good stuff.
That we really represent the larger body of Atlanta, and not just Midtown and Decatur and East Atlanta Village.
We love
what do those places
Atlanta.
have in common?
They love us, but you know what's
listen, I don't have a problem with any of those places. I love those places. They've also gentrified like a lot recently.
I know.
And a lot of the people living in those places moved there recently. And I think that there's something to be said for the socioeconomic conditions around those movements and how that might impact people's perspectives. But also, and this is way more important, I literally, I fantasize about just sweeping this election, the whole slate gets on. We have this super majority in control of everything. And then the next morning going to the people I've been debating fairly bitterly for several months now and saying, how can I help make your project succeed?
That's right.
You know?
Because
I really believe, believe that we need to do socialism. We have to show up for each other. And that includes the people I don't personally like and the people I disagree with.
One of the first things we're going to do is just welcome people back into the chapter and start talking collectively about how we can build a stronger Atlanta that's in coalition with all of these. Shout out People's Agenda. Shout out North Georgia Labor Council, all of these groups that have been part of the
Socialist Rifle Association.
Socialist Rifle Association. We could go on and on, but just making sure that they're all part of this. So join us. Let's get to work.
Vote. Go over there and check out this slate. And just listening to y'all passion today, listening to even the recommendation, before we ended this segment, you made it about someone else and about helping someone else. And I can tell you the honest truth, out of everything I've learned about DSA, at the core of it, it is how people can help people. And so solidarity with you all and all of your efforts. I also want to say, if you actually want any type of revolution, of any type, it starts local. This race is important because we're talking about actual tangible material assistance to people locally, and we can help the people locally. They'll help us when we need to do some things nationally. Thank you all so much for joining us. Y'all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Won't you let me stay forever? Light up in the sky, filled with treasures. You off, you left me out for dead.
Ever since I was a teen, had prices on my head. Had to cut you off, you left me out for dead. They do what I do, I'm like Simon Says. Just picked up some bands, come again. They do what I do, I'm like Simon Says. Yeah, I'm the running man, rapping rubber bands. They do what I do, I'm like Simon Says. Just picked up some bands, come again. They do what I do, I'm like Simon Says. Yeah, I'm the running man.
Don't feel right. I still wanna party with her. Oh yeah. Even when it don't feel right. You know I'ma party with her. We been chillin' on the Wednesday, slept until it's Thursday. She don't wanna leave me, not just yet. Told me all about last Friday when she went all crazy. Didn't go to bed till Saturday. I don't wanna go without, so I asked her to stay. Though she broke my heart in a million ways, but I'm putting that aside now. I'ma feel alright now, happy just as long as she's with me. I've been trying my luck every day of the week, yeah. With my baby, what's up? Always down every weekend. No love her too much, but I just can't get enough. She's slipping through.
Like It or Not with Benjamin Dixon starts now.
Y'all about to go off from this next clip. Because had this been in Nebraska, I don't care where I am, you come up on me coughing, I consider that an assault, and I will respond in kind. And if you are like in this clip, a woman, I'll just have to call my sisters. Let's watch the clip.
That's a, excuse me?
Excuse me, I'm coming through. You're so cute.
She's coughing at me. She's coughing at me.
No,
yes.
look at you guys. You're so cute. You're such a Karen. Okay, whatever.
She followed them through the store.
Why don't you have a mask on? Because I don't need to have one on. I'm not sick, and neither are you. Okay, but you don't have to be coughing at me.
You don't know who's sick or not.
It's my allergies.
You
I
don't
have
know
allergies.
who's sick or not by looking at somebody.
Yeah. And so 2 years ago, before anybody started talking about COVID, you were okay with that, though, going out not knowing you were sick, right?
You don't know anything about my health.
I don't.
Yeah, she's coughing at me.
I have my allergies, and she got all freaked out because I'm coughing.
No, she's coughing.
How do you know? You don't know, and she just said, I don't know anything about her health. You don't know anything about my health. Maybe I have a medical release. I don't need to wear a mask.
Okay, bye.
Why don't you have a mask on? Because I don't need to have one on. I'm not sick, and neither are you.
Hoocha.
I have allergies. Yeah. And so 2 years ago, before anybody started talking.
It's just absolutely disgusting, bruh. That's just like there are really people like this. I want y'all to understand that there are really people like this out there. Like people who are shooting people because I'm a cashier at a store and I ask you to put your mask up and you get mad.
That's right.
Because I ask you to put your mask on. You go outside and get a whole damn gun and kill a person because they ask you to put your mask on. What's so damn difficult about doing that? Like, this really pissed me off, bro. This really pissed me off.
Yeah. It really couldn't have been Rebecca Azor, Libika Azor. It jamais de ma vie. It could have never been me, because I would have smacked the hell out of this woman, out of the disrespect, especially if I was with my mama. She would have got roundhouse kicked, bicycle kicked in her chest.
Like Peter did on Family Guy. Roundhouse.
I would have stomped her into the store floor. I would have taken every 3 strands of hair that she has left on her head. I would have gotten this lady together like nobody's business but God's. Listen, I need you guys to understand that the disrespect can only go but so far.
That's right.
Sometimes you're going to run into
wrongest right person in your life.
That's right.
And it's going to be a lesson for you. It's going to be a lesson for you because people give grace. I'm somebody who gives grace in particular moments. Sometimes grace is out the window on sight because this right here is very disrespectful. And, I know sometimes the anti-maskers and the people who believe in the conspiracy theories surrounding COVID-19 and the Delta variant, they're very extreme. But it's almost as if they're dangerous, right? They're very dangerous. And like you said, Bubba, just for the simple fact of somebody saying, hey, you can't come into the store with your mask. Somebody will go to their car and possibly get a gun and come back in the store because they felt disrespected, but they don't see this as disrespect. What they call this is very American. It's patriotic. I'm doing this because I have my rights. Do you understand? I have the freedom of speech and the freedom to do whatever I like, or I have a health issue. And with the argument of the health issue, they're asking, well, what is your health issue? Well, I have a rights. That's the issue right there. And to me, it just sounds like your issue is that you're racist, or you just have no idea that what you're doing right now could get your ass killed. But in the same sense, you can definitely get people killed with just coughing on somebody, playing around, but you may as well very well have COVID-19.
That's right.
And that is what is my issue. No, this lady I would have been risking my life.
Yeah.
Because I would have slapped every taste out of her mouth. Then she would have been like, I can't smell, I can't taste.
And she would have thought she had COVID, then mama would have slapped her because I can't hit females. The guy I'm on phone hit Rebecca, my mama, my sisters, my niece. Somebody
you said Mama Gwen?
on her. Mama Gwen just said in the chat, when I get mad, I am scary angry. When she coughed on me, that would have been one of those days. Mama already said in the chat, I saw jail bars.
Lord. Mama
That's where
Gwen?
I get people don't understand. I get my temper doesn't come from my father because I used to have a very bad temper. My temper comes from my mother.
Mine
It's
too,
like,
Rosemary.
Poke the bell. You poke the bell. You keep poking. I'm nice as hell. I am. When you keep on poking, I'll hulk out. Literally.
Y'all both, speaking of Bear, this is a horrible transition, but y'all both mentioned that the very tragic case here in Georgia of the clerk who was killed because she asked somebody to put the mask on, and it was at a grocery store called Big Bear. And James, you put it at the beginning of this, you put that thing spot on. Y'all, we dealing with folks who will happily either harm you because you asked them to do something that's in the best interest of everybody, like put on a mask. Or you have people like this Karen who is out in this grocery store not knowing whether or not she's spreading COVID-19 because there are asymptomatic people. And just the fact that she feels like the thing to do in the middle of the pandemic is to make a statement by coughing on people suggests that she wants to inflict that type of pain on people. So that's why I see this as assault. And anything that transpires after that to me is self-defense. Because if I don't defend my family from her coughing on them, they very well could die.
And that's
and Dwayne, you about to say something to Dwayne's too. I'm sorry, Rebecca.
No, all I was going to say was she had the right one that day because certain people, she would have had a health issue when she got punched in her face.
Look at Jesus Christ.
That part.
She played with the right ones that day. Don't come to Atlanta with that though.
And no offense, and it's great those people provided grace for her, because I don't know if they're minorities or whatever, but we already know if police officers would have come, she probably would have been on the floor crying and said that she was abused, that she was attacked, and they wouldn't have. They didn't want to put their phones down because they were filming her, and then all that stuff could have been a result of what this woman is doing, and that's just why. But I would have been willing to go to jail, especially if my mama was with me. I would have definitely. I do not play.
Self-preservation is a natural instinct. In the middle of a pandemic, and you cough on somebody. Go ahead, James.
But no, that's grounds for instant butt whooping right there.
Even outside,
she needs to be charged.
Even outside of the pandemic, they teach you that when you were a little kid. Like you don't cough and sneeze and all that on people. You don't do that.
That's real.
On a good day when the sun is shining and the clouds are just right and there ain't no pandemic and this woman wants to go around here, this human being wants to go around here coughing on people. You right. Everybody, I agree with every one of y'all. She got the right ones that day and the wrong ones too.
And somebody brought it up in the chat as well too. Why is it all Karens have that weird ass smile before they go on a little tirade? If you go back to the beginning of this clip, just look at her face.
Go back to it. Let's see. It's all Karens have that same facial expression.
Possession, they're possessed. There goes that witchcraftery. That's witchcraft.
She has been identified. She's from Nebraska. Her name is Janine Huskovic. And she obviously, you can't get away with this stuff in the digital age. We would track you down. And here's a statement from her employer. They said, the health and safety of our employees and the communities in which we live and work are of the utmost concern to us. We are taking the matter of an SAP employee incident very seriously and investigating the situation. And then she subsequently lost her job after their investigation. So KKK, Coughing Karen, has been canned. James. You know I be liking these alliterations, bro.
What the hell, man? How you call me off guard? God damn it, man.
Hey, man.
That's what her dumb ass get, though. You like, I want you to come up to, excuse me, coming through.
Come on, bro, for real.
Man, oh my gosh.
And think that they could get away with it. She really felt like I'm right. Who is it? You asked about the look that's in their eye, or was it? Somebody mentioned the look that's in their eye, and
that smile.
That smile.
Yeah, that smile. That
she had that smile because she felt like this was my moment. This is my moment where I get to show the world that I am right and everyone else is wrong. And subsequently, she lost her job. So solidarity with everyone who knows how and what to do when you are confronted with the Karen. The cops will not be on your side. So don't allow it to go into a situation where they will come. Just break out your camera and post it into the internet, and the rest will take care of it.
Can I just ask if these Kens and Karens will ever learn? Like,
no.
How many? I'm just saying, like, how many times does the internet have to prove
what it can do?
They don't understand it. They just think that, hey, maybe, okay, I can get away with this. No, there's somebody always watching and recording. Always.
That's it. That's right.
And now, especially, we know what, like you just said, we know that the police not going to do nothing. So we take matters into our own hands. We don't have to put our hands on you. We just got to record you, put that video on the internet, and let the internet do its thing.
Do your thing, Twitter, and they always do. There's a clip that shows a video of this young kid who's talking at a school board meeting, and behind him, he's trying to convince the school board to institute a mask mandate. And behind him are some grown-ass people, women, Karens, who mock a little boy who's
let our kids smile.
You know what? Just watch it.
If I get COVID, I'm going to bring it to my family. And I talk to my grandparents a lot. They're higher risk than me, so I don't want to give them COVID. This time last year, my grandmother, who was a former teacher at the Rutherford County school system, died of COVID because someone wasn't wearing a mask. This is a very
Oh my God.
This is
Hey guys, we're here to act professional. Please, sir, go ahead.
Thank you.
That's
This is an avoidable issue, and by not wearing masks in schools, it's irresponsible. We're killing people. This is not something that we should be doing for the education of our students. Thank you.
I don't like that. I don't like that I saw that a child was getting chastised by grown women, mostly grown women, who are holding up signs that are supposed to be kind-hearted, right? Let our kids smile, even though we know that that's anti-mask. But, you know, if you want your kids to smile, you know, and show the purity of your kids, you're literally bullying a child for saying that he wants to make sure that his family is safe, but wanting your child to be free and exposed to COVID-19. I don't understand how you guys could be wanting to, have this freedom for your child, but won't even listen to the freedoms of this child. You guys are abusive. And it's always those people, like I was saying, it's always those people who are representation of something, but it's like, hey, I want my child safe until I want my, it's like until they try to take away my child's rights. Now it's like not all children deserve, but only my kid. But the kid that's over here fighting for the safety of everyone, we're going to chastise him. We're going to belittle him. We're going to make him feel small. And the way that my heart broke for him because of these little trash behind, look at the lady chewing, smacking her gum, and the other one behind him with the glasses. It's just it's unfortunate to see that women, parents are sitting here leading this charge. That is an embarrassment.
And this goes to show you, okay, you see how he feels about this. How many of the other teens feel the same way that he does? See, these people are just going against what they believe. Ask your damn kids what they want to do. You're not even asking them. We're not even seeing any kids at these protests. You seen these dumbass parents that's just like, let our kids smile. Stupid ass, they can smile under the mask. I smile under my mask all the time. Y'all just dumb, bro.
Hey, have y'all picked up on social cues? You could tell who's smiling at you and who's not underneath that mask. Because
you smile with your eyes. If you have big cheeks like me, they pop right through the side of the mask. So they know
you can't see my eyes when I smile. So every time I smile, you see this. I look like
Let's I feel bad for their children.
Yeah.
Right. Pull those women back up on the screen. These mothers. I'm going to guess that they're mothers because they're saying let our children smile. But the way this has been organized by Steve Bannon, who was an operative for Donald Trump, very clearly, he sent out very specific instructions to Republicans and conservatives all across the country of what to do when they attend these school board meetings. Now, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they probably got children in the school system. And to that end, I feel bad for their children. But there's still a possibility they might not even have children. They're literally there as operatives of the conservative movement in order to try to maximize the amount of people who are being killed by COVID-19. I mean, it could be both. It could be both. But I feel bad for their kids.
I really feel bad for this young man who's fighting the fight by his little self with his little cut on his hair. And, he's a child.
Bang-yang. He little bang.
Yeah, his little bang-yang. Because I don't like the Karen's baying in the back. She's pissing me off. And for her to just and the fact that
smacking of the gum is killing me.
He's the most adult person in the room. He's the most adult person in the room. The adults had to be told, hey, let's be mature. Like they had to be told that.
And they're just so uninterested in what he's saying. Just like the look on their faces is like just utter disgust. Like, this is a child, man.
If they had stones in their hands, this baby would have been stoned.
Would have been stoned.
Down. Just
Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Rada Mcguire is your host. Thank you so kindly for being with us today. We have a wonderful guest today. Rebecca Azer is the co-host of let me say it better. Rebecca is the host of Like It or Not under the Benjamin Dixon Show's platform. She is an insightful independent journalist with a very informed opinion. And one of the reasons I wanted her here is because of said informed opinion with a passion. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Rebecca, how are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Egberto. I'm doing really, really good. I'm happy to be here. This is funny because I've been invited to speak on a lot of people's platforms, and I just don't do it much because I'm usually really busy. But I absolutely, I love when we have family friends to the show, and I think that you are one of them. So I was like, let's just go ahead and let's get right into it. So I am your first. This is my first outside of our show when it comes to politics, speaking about politics. So this is wonderful. I'm happy to be here.
I am honored to have you here because let me tell you, from the time I started appearing ever so often on your show, I am just enthralled with the passion that you guys bring to politics. And I think most importantly, it's a lot of fun. Like I watch you in the mornings, and you're talking about just about everything that touches the average person, right?
Yeah.
And that is, and to be blunt, I am starting to learn a few things, because I tend to be sort of a straight arrow politics guy, and that can get sort of boring. And watching you guys is just, it's just pleasant in the morning. Let me just tell you that.
No, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Literally being on the show and meeting people like you guys, it's great because we're all talking about the same thing, but we probably package it different. But there's nothing wrong with, just being on the same wave, right? And we all look different. We all speak different languages and things like that. But the message and what we're trying to do is all the same. And I love it because we have these different generations, and usually there's like a division there. And the fact that we can have you on the show and I can see literally where you are with it and how you put down the information. And then you can actually come on and see how we do it. And my thing is to do it in a fun manner and, and bring people on so they can have fun too. But at the same time, also get educated by people like you. So this is why I think it's so good for both of our worlds to blend, but for us to accept each other at where we are, knowing that when we get whatever fight it is that we're fighting for, it's for all of us to be okay. It's for all of us to be good. So,
and we all do it together. Now, let me tell you, I want, first of all, I want folks to make sure and always tune in to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Tell us a little bit about when your show's at and time and how they can get there. Because one of the things I want to start doing, Rebecca, is making sure that we all co-mingle and we let people know that there are different places to go to get different flavors of good, actual information. So talk to me.
Yes. So, well, basically, you can find our show first and foremost every morning, Monday through Friday on YouTube, the YouTube space, Facebook space. We're on Twitter as well. But YouTube is our prominent format. And we stream from there every morning at 8:30 a.m. We have a DJ. Yeah, Eastern Standard Time. Yes. So everybody gets a little like, oh, gosh, I got to wake up in the morning. But they still catch us. And you can also catch it after we record as well, because we'll have it on live play for you. But 8:30 in the morning, we'll have the DJ start you off for a little bit, and enjoy that. And then we get on and we'll just have a conversation a bit about our day, and then we'll go right into some politics. Sometimes we'll have some guests on like yourself, or some political guests, or just different guests that come as experts on a subject matter that we may be talking about, so that we can push further the issue that we're talking about, or it just come from the mouth of the expert, because sometimes we're not experts. I mean, we have our commentary and we do give you the ideas and the stories, but it's so much better to have these representatives sometimes, these activists, just all across the board, these other media members in the same space as us. So you guys can come and find that. And then we have news that's for the culture, like millennials like to say, we like to say it's for the culture. Sometimes where things are happening within the Black community that won't be covered on any other mainstream media. And we like to talk about that and get to different conversations about it. And I like positive news. We do this thing called Black Joy, because sometimes we can take you through a heavy start of the day when it comes to politics that could actually break you. And then so I like to ending with something positive for people. It could be a quote, it could be some videos, just something fun for us to just have conversations about. When it in most first and most of all, it's always going to be related to Black issues. So,
well, let me tell you, I want the audience to know a little bit about Rebecca Azer. So give us a little bio about Rebecca, because I mean, like I said, when you listen to your commentary, you actually see that you are everybody's woman. In other words, you go out there and people can feel that the things you talk about are things that they are going to live through. I heard you talking yesterday when I was on your show about what you went through, some tribulations you went through at the job, etc. So tell me a little about you first, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions about that as well.
Sure thing. So me first, again, my name is Rebecca. So I am Haitian. I come from, I'm a product of immigrants out of Haiti, and I am a journalist, right? I started off, I went to Florida A&M University, which is a predominantly, I call it the #1 HBCU in the nation. It's a predominantly Black school, historical Black university out in Tallahassee. And I had the blessing of going to that school where I got a degree in broadcast journalism. And I used to do local news there. And I also did the local news for the school. I did the local news for the local news station there. And I also did radio. Coming out of there, I left and I moved to New York, and I started working for like reality shows and working with them and fashion journalism. So I'm all across the board. And then when I got my master's degree, I moved over to Atlanta and I got my master's degree in what they call new media, what we see where media has changed, and we were able to flip media in the social media space, doing like using your Twitter or whatever to put out news, or YouTube. So I got my master's degree in that. So I'm well versed all across the platforms when it comes to media and journalism. And so I partnered with Ben. We used to work at this company. That's when I got into politics. I was never really into politics. I was just used to, as a journalist, regurgitating the news, not really being able to have an opinion, because how they frame it is, you have to be unbiased at all times. Although I wasn't realizing that some of these companies that I was working for had picked chose a side, which made them biased. And sometimes I was complicit, and I didn't understand at the time with the stories that were being told. And I
want to break you 1 second. Please remember your trend, because you just made a very, very important statement that I want our audience to realize. When Rebecca says that she in old media, it was always spoken about, we have to be completely unbiased. In other words, this person says, the other said. But what she realized is that there was implicit bias in what was actually chosen as the story. So that stuff about the media being unbiased was never true. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted people to understand that, because it's a very important point you made there, my friend.
Yeah. Yes. And I say that because it's something I had to learn as a journalist. And I have so many other journalist friends who had to learn that as well. Some of them still being in the mainstream media, and some of them having to go on and start their own. I was blessed with an opportunity that just fell in my hands after I graduated with my master's degree. I just applied for a job, and the company wanted me because I was Haitian, and to them I was exotic. I talked about that on my show today. I was exotic, and I could speak about the Trump issues. And so I was working for them, but little did I know I would meet Benjamin Dixon, who is my co-host, Benjamin Dixon, and him to, show me actually, hey, you have a voice in this politics thing, right? You don't have to just be straightforward talking about Trump or having these conversations that don't mean anything to you. You have, because outside we'll have these conversations. He said, if you feel this way, change your stories to that so you can speak and have your opinions. And I started seeing the benefits of that. I started seeing that, oh my goodness, I actually have a voice. I actually feel something. I'm actually learning about politics, and I'm teaching people who aren't on the higher level or the lower level, but regular everyday people about politics. And it doesn't have to be worded in this way, or it doesn't have to be worded in that way. This is just like, hey, I'm just like you, and this is how I feel about it, and it just really, from there, I just began to grow. And I started changing the stories from just Donald Trump to Black women in their healthcare, to Black people and their lack of knowledge when it comes to their local legislators. I started learning and teaching, and that was really what got me to a place where I'm like, I want to stay in politics, but I also want to add some culture to it as well. And I also got the chance and the opportunity to talk about Haiti. And that was the biggest thing for me coming into politics, because I was able to tie the two together, American politics and Haitian politics, what's happening in Haiti, how America has had their foot on their necks of Haitian people, and how it ties together, how I can reframe the narrative of how people view Haiti as the poorest country in the Western hemisphere. But it's just been a roller coaster ride, but it's been beneficial. And I don't think I want to leave politics, but I can also add the things that I love also within that realm too. So that's really been my storyline when it comes to that. I know it's all over the place, but one thing about it is I stayed in media, and I took a break from media. and had to go into corporate because I spoke my mind after working.
You have to pay the bills.
Yeah, I had to pay the bills, and media doesn't always pay.
Right.
And working. Go ahead.
No, you were talking about Haiti, right? And like one of the reasons, like I said, I love talking to you is because you always bring up these subjects and that covers issues today that I actually want to expand on. You brought up Haiti and you brought up
just after 9 a.m. on the East Coast. We're going to jump right into a conversation with Professor Harvey Kaye. Rebecca Azor is going to join us momentarily. We have so many more videos, so many more miles to cover, but I wanted to bring in Professor Harvey Kaye, who's a historian and sociologist, author of several books, including Thomas Paine's The Promise for America, The Fight for Four Freedoms, and friend of the show. Professor Kaye, thank you so much for joining us again. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Although, I was listening to your first segment there, the first hour, and, I'm still astounded that there are people who bought into the idea that, especially the Republicans who bought into the idea that the vaccine was some kind of grand plan, to crush the right or something along those lines. Anyhow, I hope people are listening.
I'm glad you started there, Professor Kaye, because I wasn't quite emotionally ready to let that go. Because is it surprising to you? Can you think of any other time in history where even the powerful, we know, and through history that there's always been a casual dismissal of the life of Black people, of indigenous populations. Currently, there's a casual dismissal of life in the global South. There's clearly a dismissal of life in Yemen. There's a dismissal of life in Afghanistan. And we have an external dismissal of life. But did you ever think that the empire would have a dismissal of their own lives? The leaders and the rulers of this empire would just casually dismiss their own lives and the lives of their children because of the politics of COVID-19.
And it would never ever have occurred to me. It would never have occurred to me, given the fact that we just had one of the most reactionary presidential administrations, which literally launched the effort in its own way to secure the vaccine. And for all of the idiocies that the president himself spouted, the fact was that it was in the course of his presidency that the vaccines were developed. So who would imagine Who would imagine that the very folks who were the base of that particular party and especially that administration would actually respond to Fox News folks' dismissive remarks and literally place themselves in jeopardy? I was listening, and I think I even tweeted or not, messaged into the chat that the Republicans are eager to suppress the vote of Democrats, especially African Americans and other people of color around the country, by way of legislation, and yet the Republicans also have seemed eager to wipe out their own base, given their dismissal of the imperative, first of all, of wearing masks. You will recall that it all began there, and
that's the thing, Professor Kaye, is that Republicans have become masters of pretending as though they are the oppressed.
Yeah.
They understand the philosophical and even literary advantage that the narrative of the oppressed gives people, and that's why they feign oppression. The war on Christmas, the war on Christianity. There is no war on Christianity in this country. There is no war against white people, but they know how to make critical race theory to be the boogeyman so that they can pretend to be oppressed. You actually wrote about something that I think is analogous to this in Senator Josh Hawley, and the Republican senator who is now creating this narrative of victimhood as it pertains to tech, the tech industry. Tell us about that article that you wrote for Common Dreams.
Yeah, well, I couldn't resist reviewing his book, The Tyranny of Big Tech, because it was striking to me that one of the foremost of the reactionary senators, the junior senator from Missouri, was going to go after big tech. And I knew enough from the remarks that were on the book that he was going to be calling for the breakup of big tech, which, by the way, and that's a fine idea, absolutely. But that was the striking thing, that here was this Republican. Look, Republicans are generally the champions of big capital. the
Absolutely.
champions of the corporate order. So how could it be that the foremost dimension of the corporate order was going to come under assault from a right-wing Republican? So I picked up the book, and what was striking was not the way he developed the argument specifically about big tech. There was nothing terribly original about his attack on big tech. It's, the degree to which it has monopolized our public culture in many ways, monopolized not only shopping, but so much of our public culture. But what he did is much of the book literally projects a radical democratic class struggle argument, which he mobilizes to go after big tech. What he said, is
I want to hold you there only because I want to contextualize for the audience. So when we say big tech, let's help the people really think Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, and then obviously some other tech companies, Apple, anything that you put in your hands or you log into in order to access this conversation or to have FaceTime with your grandbabies or your best friend or your bae. That's all big tech. And we all understand how ubiquitous it's everywhere. Every aspect of our life.
And I'll just add I'll just add one thing to that. We used to talk a great deal, and still in many circles talk about what's called civil society. That is the space of American life, which is neither government nor specifically the economy. Civil society encompasses labor unions, civil rights organizations, even, community associations, parent-teacher organizations, so on. Now, what people would say is the imperative for democracy is that we have open and free debate and discussion, and civil society is the place in which all of that takes place, out of which ideas are formed, the culture is created, and so on. We shouldn't forget that big tech literally has become our public square.
Yes.
In great part. So,
yes.
So we have corporate operations, enterprises, in essence, shaping and controlling the public square, which, by the way, 20 years ago was the question of what about shopping malls? Were they public square or corporate space? So the critique of big tech that he offers is right on target. That's not what
this is Senator Josh Hawley. So the critique in his book, and this absolutely matters because this is one of the people who's absolutely going to stand in the way of our voting rights, and how they leverage big tech they leverage big tech, Facebook, social media, YouTube, they being Republicans. Conservatives have mastered the art of leveraging big tech to push back against our ability to vote and to participate and to have a fair democracy. So it really begs the question, what in the hell is Josh Hawley's problem with big tech when it is serving him?
Well, so Josh Hawley projects himself as a populist. That is, that he is going to advance, he's going to represent, he's going to argue in favor of the interests of what he calls the common man and woman. In other words, another way of putting it, and he actually uses the term working people, the working class. Now, what he does, and this was what makes him so fascinating. Look, he lined up with Trump from start to finish. Okay, that's well known.
Okay, so so everybody's very clear. Josh Hawley is a Trumpist, and probably even further than Donald Trump. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, and consider this. The momentous January 6th, right? Hawley already made clear he was going to go into the Congress and dissent on the Electoral College vote. He was going to vote no on accepting the vote.
Correct.
Okay. As he approached the Congress, as this crowd, which soon became this insurrectionary mob, was forming, he walked by, and there's a famous photo. I probably should have said, put this up when you get the chance, but anyhow, where he gives a fist bump to the crowd to encourage them, right?
Is that's the image that you have on this article of the article? Okay, David, I'm gonna shoot you that link, and you might can pull it up. We'll put it in post, most certainly, and tell us about. So that's January 6th.
That's January 6th, and as a consequence of that, the book contract that he had with Simon & Schuster, okay, was pulled from him, and he brought the book out with the very conservative, in fact, in some fashion, very decidedly reactionary press, Regnery, Regnery. right? Now, this is
And when you
here's the
say
thing.
reactionary, and because we're getting into the weeds, and I want to make sure everyone can
sorry.
come with us, because no, and I we need the nuance, but I just want to make sure that everybody's with us. When you say reactionary, we're talking about the type of people, the reactionary thought of the people. Think of Charlottesville, the people who marched with the tiki torches and the khaki pants. Those are reactionaries. So Josh Hawley aligns with the reactionary Donald Trump faction of society. He had his book pulled because of his support for January 6th. And now instead he's going after big tech. But big tech is still in favor. I mean, Ben Shapiro, there was an article from NPR that showed that Ben Shapiro has built an entire Facebook empire. Big tech has been good to conservatism. So why is he coming after them?
Because keep this in mind, he's planning on running for president. I'm sure of it. And his goal, look, Hawley recognizes what all too many people in the Democratic Party for all too many decades have either refused to understand or have run away from. And that is that working people, whether they're white, black, or brown, okay, whatever their aspirations are, know who, in quotes, their class enemy is. And when I say that, what I mean is that they work for companies that don't pay them what they're worth, okay, that treat them, especially during this pandemic, we've seen the kinds of treatment that Amazon and other companies have subjected workers in the warehouses and else. So he's trying to appeal to those working people who voted for Trump to begin with because they were just plain angry at the Democrats. I mean, he knows this. I've been talking about this for years. And what really then freaked me out as I read this book is how he presents the story of America in a way which Democrats themselves, even Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders and progressive Elizabeth Warren and others, refused to talk in these terms. And this is what I've been, as you know, I've been doing this with you for some time. It is, to me, shocking how the Democrats turned their back on the progressive tradition, truly progressive social democratic tradition of Franklin Roosevelt, of the New Deal years. And moreover, it was Roosevelt himself who had a real understanding of history. At one point he said, the Republicans have abandoned Abraham Lincoln. We should make him one of our own. So in other words, so think about this. So I thought, well, wait a minute. Where's Hawley? What is he seeking to do? So in fact, he's in many ways, though he's aligned with the Trump folks, he's not a Trumpster exactly. He wants to be the next Ronald Reagan. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. Ronald Reagan was a master of the use and abuse of the past. Okay. I mean, he was brilliant at talking about the past.
Okay. I'm with you.
So, okay. As a way of literally calling on Americans. And this is Reagan's words, not Trump's. It was Reagan who said, "Join me in the crusade to make America great again." And basically he used the past as a way of encouraging people to understand that they
Okay,
should.
Pause,
Yes,
because
I
I
know
need to.
this.
You just told us that the phrase "Make America Great Again" actually came from Ronald Reagan.
It was his campaign slogan in 1980.
In 1980, Donald Trump co-opted it again. Well, I mean, it's right in the the intellectual precursor to Donald Trump.
Right.
And you're saying that Josh Hawley is saying, I'm going to skip over trying to be the next Trump. I'm going all the way back to the originator, the Ronald Reagan.
Right. Hawley is a very smart and thus all the more dangerous character. He was an undergraduate at Stanford. He went to Yale Law School. This is not a lightweight guy. Okay. This is not even his first book. His first book was a study of Theodore Roosevelt, which was like an undergraduate thesis that he wrote. So what he does in this book, I'm not going to read much, but I just want to read to people. Listen to this, how basically he's grabbing hold of history to empower working people to think of him as the new Ronald Reagan or the new populist leader. Big tech looms large as any corporate power in American history, as large as the railroads from a century back. And I'll skip some lines. Its sway is prodigious. Its reach is wide. And yet, like those earlier monopolies, big tech's power is ultimately precarious because Americans are never long contented to be ruled over by barons. They agitate, they protest, they rebel against it. That is what is happening now. And that is why there is cause for hope.
Okay. I need it only for the sake of time. I need us to cut to the essential here, because you're hitting on something that I think is critical for my audience to hear and everyone to hear, because what you're saying is that Josh Hawley is not dumb like Trump.
Right.
He is very intelligent. He knows history, and he's using the power of history, just like Ronald Reagan. And he's now co-opting the populist language of like an FDR, but he's trying to make it synonymous with, basically, he's trying to give us a nationalistic form, a way of viewing an economic populism.
Yes.
Would you?
Yes, I would. But I want to add something really crucial, Ben, and that it's this. People don't realize that when Ronald Reagan ran for president, he was not the hero or the champion of the Eastern corporate establishment. Big capital did not want Ronald Reagan to be president. They wanted George H.W. Bush.
That's right. I remember that.
That's first.
Well, I remember studying that. That was the year I was born. Go ahead.
Yes. Second, Ronald Reagan ran against the Republican establishment of his own party. So think about Hawley. He's running against basically the corporate establishment, big tech, and he's also running against his own party, so that working people, and by the way, don't forget, Trump actually saw an increase in votes among people of color this past time around, not radically so, but so. And so Hawley's got in mind, he's going to try to win the white working class vote, and maybe, given the nature of these past few years, he'll even sort of pull in all the more, in spite of his obviously racialist politics.
That's it right there. That's the last part, because when you tell me that Josh Hawley is aligning with the reactionaries, that tells me that he is the smart version of Donald Trump, that he would leverage those same people from Charlottesville, but he would leverage them in a way that gives them some type of intellectual precursor, some philosophical underpinnings to make them feel smart and justified. So I have to ask you this last question before we go to this break. How is he unsatisfied with everything that Facebook and social media and tech is giving to conservatives? Because the algorithm is in the faith. It prefers conservative reactionary thought.
Well, he too buys into this idea that this is all part of this corporate and liberal establishment kind of plan to drive conservatism out of the public square, which also then enables him to appeal to folks who are indeed just plain old right-wing Republicans and could care less about working class needs. No, I mean, what's fascinating, look, the tragedy here, and I wrote this, and I have to tell you that I didn't do this with the idea that I'm going to reveal to the Hawley or even Trump voters what's really going on. I'm trying to tell people on the left, whether they're liberals, progressives, or radical, whatever they want to call themselves, that we have left behind the history that's ours. And we have got to start, as you've heard me say all too many times probably, we have got to start talking about the degree to which this has been a radical story, the story of America. For all of it, the exploitation and oppression, the fact is that we did overcome along the way because of struggles from below. And we have to remind people that the way forward is not simply to vote, but it's to get organized and not allow the Democrats to be so either ignorant or suppressive of the story of America that is ours. We've got
the radical story of America.
Yes, well, sorry. Yes, indeed. As you know, I mean, my book is titled "Take Hold of Our History, Make America Radical Again." I mean, we've got to cultivate a narrative that extends from the American Revolution and Tom Paine all the way through to the likes of A. Philip Randolph and so on and so forth.
Yes. Absolutely. I would love to have you on one day with Brother Carl Mack as we talk about that history and how dangerous it is for conservatives to co-opt the radical history of the United States, especially when they're co-opting it in a way that is going to be suppressive to marginalized groups across the globe. And I think that's the warning that you're giving us in your article on Common Dreams entitled "Josh Hawley Throws a Challenge at Big Tech and the Left." Professor Harvey K. I got to have you back as soon as possible. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. You're brilliant.
That said, I do want to cover something that I'm covering very, very, very closely. Good morning, Mayor Byron Brown in Buffalo, New York. We just want to say good morning from black men all across the country. Mayor Byron Brown is the incumbent Democratic mayor in the city of Buffalo, New York, who lost in a primary to a young sister by the name of India Walton. Now, many of you probably already know who Sister Walton is. She is a dynamic firebrand who has risen from the same struggle that black people have dealt with in this country since time immemorial. Like, this sister came up the hard way and she won the primaries. And this Democratic mayor refuses to concede. And not only does he refuse to concede, he's mounting a write-in campaign against, oh, you thought it was going to be a white man that came up on the screen. No.
Right.
It's a black man who is doing this to a young black sister in Buffalo, New York. And he's using the same exact language. Matter of fact, I want us to play this clip and listen to how he describes this sister. It kind of reminds me of a dude from Queens who still can't concede his race that he lost in 2020. Let's take a listen to this clip.
And I can tell you that every time she talks about defunding police, which will make our community less safe, which will make our home values go down, which will make our children less safe, that is more time that people are calling us, showing their support for our candidacy. So I hope she continues.
So what do you have to say about what he said there?
I have never said defund the police, and I'm not sure what it is that he's getting at. What I have said is that our police budget is as high as it's ever been, and crime is still up. And we know that the way to
That's the sister responding. This man has been attacking her this way the entire time. But this next clip, this is the one where he describes this young sister who beat him fair and square, Mayor Brown. He describes her as unqualified. He describes her as a radical socialist. And that is the language that is precisely the language of Donald Trump. Take a listen in.
We are going on to the general election as a candidate for mayor, and what people have been saying is write down Byron Brown. You know, we know the difference between socialism and democracy. We are going to fight for democracy in the city of Buffalo. The voters have said that they don't want an unqualified, inexperienced, radical socialists trying to learn on the job on the backs of the residents of this community. We will not let it happen.
I am a democratic socialist. The first word in that is Democrat.
I love that, sister. Go, James, come back on the screen with me. I just want to talk about it without losing my mind on this one, bro.
Can I say something real quick that I just saw in that his speech? I don't know if you saw his background. Did you see the background? I want everybody to look at that. Look at that age demographic there. These are those, and I hate to say it, the old Democratic people, the ones that are, almost on the damn side of the Republicans. That's what that looks like. It's that the older generation, man, we got to step aside and let the young generation start doing this thing. They say she's inexperienced and unqualified. Bro, what have you done for the community? What have you done for your community of all these old folks? I'm sorry to say it like that. The apologies to my senior citizens, and I don't mean it like that. But let's look at it. Look at that demographic on stage right now.
But also look at the demographic behind, look at the folks behind him.
Exactly.
Go back
to the left and the right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go back a little bit to where now see you can't see. You see. Oh, look, there's one good white man they're supporting. Look at that. Oh, that's the good white guy. And then they're gonna pan out. And then as they pan out, you see it's not just one way. This man, hey, listen, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to jump and attack a young black sister on behalf of no white person. No white folk.
At all, Ben.
We get it.
When you got Kellyanne Conway sitting over here to the side, supporting you. Come on, man. Come on.
But I got a problem with Mayor Brown.
Yeah.
I got a serious problem because this young dynamic sister beat you, fam.
Fair and square.
Fair and square. And here's the problem I got. You know, I was talking to Sister Noah Chunga, and she's been like, she's like, y'all know, if y'all know Benjamin Dixon, you know Noah Chunga, y'all know we're the Wonder Twins. She's been covering that race extensively. And she told me last night about all the different moneyed interests that are behind Mayor Brown and how they're especially against Sister Walton, India Walton, because she does identify as a democratic socialist, because she does want to do something good for the people, because she does want people to have health care. Like, can I just ask black folks a question real quick? Could you not use health care whether or not it's attached to your job? Like, can we just, because this is what the sister is fighting for. I just want to know, has there ever been a time in your life, black folks, that it would have been easier for you to live if you didn't have to keep a raggedy job for the sake of your health insurance? This sister is fighting so that you never have to do that again, so that you don't have to stay at somebody's corporate slave warehouse manufacturing. You're just wherever you're slaving at because you have to keep your insurance. What would you do with your life if you didn't have to stay bound to a job because of insurance? That's what this sister is fighting for. That's liberation. That's freedom. And Mayor Byron Brown not only is trying to keep that freedom from you, he's also doing it using the language of Donald Trump. I want to play the clip again, because listen to him saying, like, some people say, he said, people have been saying, write down Mayor Brown. It sounds exactly like Donald Trump. Run the clip one more time.
Just like him.
We are going on to the general election as a candidate for mayor, and what people have been saying is write down Byron Brown. You know, we know the difference between socialism and democracy. We are going to fight for democracy in the city of Buffalo.
Okay.
The voters have said that they don't want an...
What? Flag on the play. Flag on the play. Now, I know y'all are like, Ben, you be getting so wordy and academic and all this kind of stuff. I'm sorry, y'all. I actually took time to study this stuff.
Preach, brother.
I've got my I got my bachelor's in economics, but that's, and I got my master's in political science and international relations, and I'm all but dissertation in, y'all know how that all but dissertation stage is. Y'all know that thing can last for 10 years. But I know my stuff. And brother, the way you said that you know the difference between socialism and capital and democracy, socialism and democracy. Oh wait, I transformed. I turned into the Matrix. So,
pull them out.
Sorry, if you're watching live, we'll edit that in post. But
right.
Listen, the fact that he juxtaposed socialism with democracy tells me that he has no idea what either is. Tell me which one it is, Mayor Brown. Do you believe that socialism is a governing principle, or do you believe it to be an economic principle? What do you view democracy to be? Do you view democracy to be an economic paradigm or a governing philosophy? Because you just conflated two things that do not match. Democracy is not an economic paradigm, Mayor Brown. And this is something that I'm quite sure that Sister India Walton can tell you about even better than I can, because she is a democratic socialist. The first word in that is democratic. But I don't think she should have to. Here's what I'm talking about we got to do. She should not have to say another word to this brother because she already beat him. Am I right about it? She already beat him fair and square. You lost, dude. And now you're trying to mount a write-in campaign? Nah, we're not doing that. So I want everyone who's listening, everyone who's watching, I want right now and for the rest of the day, this is an appeal to your leaders. This is an appeal to your leaders. This is your right to search for yourself, Mayor Byron Brown, who is the mayor of Buffalo, New York. And this is your chance to search for yourself how to contact his office and how to let them know how bad faith this is, how Trumpian this is. This is the epitome of the January 6th. This is the denial of a fair election. This is to say that he did not get his way, and if necessary, he's going to march up the steps of the Capitol on January 6th and seize the office of the mayor in New York, Buffalo, New York, whether you like it or not. I think we should have a problem with that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Last but not least, black men, we sure as hell better have a problem with this brother doing this to a young black sister who is blazing on the stage. How few and far and in between do we get the opportunity to celebrate a black woman who seizes power through this system? And to have a black man jump in there and try to snatch it from her. The devil is a liar.
It's that old crab in the bucket mentality. Hate to say it, but it exists. It really does.
It does, man. I called his office yesterday. I'm not playing with I'm not playing with
you. What was the result? Any outcome? Did you get him?
No. They stopped answering phone calls. We did a thread on Twitter. We did a thread on Twitter, and and Mayor Brown, let me reassure you, it went semi-viral. It hasn't gone viral yet. I don't know why I'm taking this so personally, but I think I'm taking it personally because my daughter wants to run for mayor.
Nice.
So anyway,
y'all call to action. Go to that post, Ben. Make sure you retweet that so we can retweet that. Everybody call to action. Y'all know what to do. Let's make it go viral, man.
Yeah.
Really, at this point, there should be no reason that we're trying to block our own. And that's what really kills me and irks my soul is that this man goes up there, and I hate to say it, and I wish my mom could get on and talk about it because I know she knows. But how would you try to just stop this sister and just basically saying, y'all just sound like Trump supporters, white supremacists. Exactly. Saying that Biden didn't win, we're going to go in office, we're going to pull him out. That's basically the same thing that you're saying about this sister. And you sound dumb yourself up here on this stage and don't have any other facts.
We know the difference between socialism and democracy. Well, no, you don't, because if you did, you would say, we know the difference between socialism and capitalism. Or maybe you do know that that's the true equivalence, but because you don't want to let people know that you're not really there serving the people, you're there serving capitalism. You can't say the truth, but you know who can? India Walton can.
Yep.
And you know what else?
He just doesn't want to mess up his money. That's all that is.
She already beat you.
Already beat you.
Hashtag stand down Mayor Brown. Hashtag stand down Mayor Brown. I don't care how small my platform is. We're not going to stop till this brother is out of this race. There will be no write-in campaign. Like it or not.
Agreed.
James, I'm going to let you get it here, Doc. I'm going to go grab.
One of the reasons, like I said, I love talking to you is because you always bring up these subjects and that covers issues today that I actually want to expand on. You brought up Haiti and you brought up the poverty in Haiti, right? And people always look down and say, oh, look at the poorest nation in the hemisphere and it's a black nation, not realizing that Haiti was the first black independent country. That they revolted. They did what the founding fathers of America did. They didn't like working taxation without representation, labor without representation, you know. And interestingly, what they never tell you is that one of the problems with Haiti is the blockade of the Americans and others because they were a free country, and that the slaves, the former slaves, had to pay. They had to pay France for their freedom, and they have been doing that for centuries. And that is, and henceforth, the poverty. It is the same capitalist system screwing a country and taking away their wherewithal. So I just had to say that once you brought up Haiti, and people have to understand. Oh, Haiti's not a basket case. Haiti was made an issue by the capitalists around the world. So just thought I might say that. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, I know that. See, that's what I do. I might start talking, and I'll have this point. I'll take it everywhere. So that's another look. That's a story for another day.
Right.
But I'm glad that you pointed out all those things, and I want people to go and research those things and how they tie it together. American politics, American leaders, and how they've had their foot on the neck of Haiti, and how we've been having to pay France for our entire existence of being free after we fought for our freedom against our oppressors. But go ahead and Google that. It's a simple Google search and you can find it. Yes, working in politics, I actually, me and Ben grew something, and we decided to break away and do something even bigger, working with the well-known activist. We always do this, but he shall not be named. But we worked with a really well-known activist, huge activist, and we grew something there. And then I realized that this is when Ben started teaching me, not all kinfolk is skin folk. That's what he said. Or not all skin folk is kinfolk. Just because they say they're an activist, they're fighting for it, then you get right with these people and you're excited to work with them, and they're not doing the work. So I had to break away from that because I called him out. I called that particular activist out, and he's very popular. And I called him out. I said, hey, you're not doing the work that you said you're doing. You're stealing. You're stealing content. You're doing all of this. There's nothing being done. Ben is the one that's doing all of the work. Ben is the one that's pushing these things and actually wants to do it with his heart. And because I spoke out about it, it was a hard situation because now I felt like I was blackballed in the community. Little old me spoke up against a huge activist, and it was like, now I'm so mentally stressed. I had to take a break. So I went into the corporate world. I said, I'm just going to take a year off. I'm going to go into corporate. Me going into corporate, and I can't name my business. I would love to name the corporation that I work with. But if people go down my timeline, they'll put two and two together and realize. But me working in corporate, and I thought it would be great just to sit down for a little bit, take a breather as I figure out, my way back into politics. And it honestly was a struggle because I don't like being told what to do in that way, sitting in a cubicle farm, all of that. I just started realizing and unpacking as I worked in the corporate environment. Wow, this is a jail cell. This is like people are in cubicle farms. People are sitting here, and you're doing the same thing every day. And I was like, I don't know if I could stay here and do this, but how they wanted to keep me and how they kept throwing themselves at us to make us stay is, hey, look at the benefits you have. And I can't deny the benefits are amazing. For an American to have insurance is a big deal. And I absolutely needed insurance, especially with like my pre-existing conditions, with me having to go to the doctors and me having surgery to have like cancerous cells removed. It's expensive. It's very expensive. So them throwing that at me, I'm like, oh, okay, I get to stay. But then I keep looking around at all the people, and I'm like, these people don't even have service on their cell phones to call their kids. And me being me, working in this environment, like I challenge the managers, and there's roundtable meetings, and they're like, oh, they got Rebecca in the room. And I remember my manager saying, he's not even the manager, he's a supervisor. He says, hey guys, I know you guys feel robotic, but you'll be our robots, and that's okay. And I was like, oh, hold on now. Oh, wait, hold on. Wait a second. Excuse me. Are you calling the people here robots and saying that they're supposed to feel just like they have no lives, no ambition, no anything, but they have to be robots and basically slaves for you guys? Is that what we're saying? And he said, yes. He looked at me and said, yes. That's
Rebecca, That is you again, you come into the narrative that not only what I talk about, but what I write about. Let me tell you something, okay? It's interesting that I said, and you remember when black people used to be slaves, they had the chains on them or the whips. And I said, America no longer has just black slaves. America has black, white, and every other slaves, because what you just talked about with the capitalist structure that you worked in is nothing more than antiseptic slavery, where most of the people, when you speak against that, the chains are in their minds. It's no longer on their wrists. It's the chains in the mind. And what you do with your show is unchain the minds. And that is what is so important about having your presence there. There are too many of us who just abide. Too many of us who just acquiesce to the system. And that's why it has lasted. And that is why I'm so impassioned with meeting folks like yourself and Ben and others that are out there educating other people, because that is how we are going to make a difference, not just for a few people, but as you merge these audiences and you go out there, you're talking about people listening and they're saying, wait a minute, Rebecca is a young woman just like me. Maybe I can be inspired by her.
And Egberto, let me tell you something. I used to be somebody who had a chained mind. That's something that I was like, that's just a systemic thing. You don't even know that you're just going through every system from when you get to school, when you're being educated, and you're just going through. You don't even know that this thing is just naturally coming to you. I thought you were supposed to look a certain kind of way, talk a certain kind of way. At one point, I used to get, oh, you talk so well for a Black person. And then I would tell them that I'm Haitian. They're like, oh, wow. And you speak another language? Wow. It was just all of that. And I thought, wow, I'm not normal. I can't be myself when I go into school. My father used to tell us, don't you go there and speak Creole, because you know how they're going to do you. They're going to put you in Esau. They're going to put you in those programs where it's for kids who don't speak English. Things like that. They're going to cap you. And I went through the system doing that. Like, they would do that to me. And then finally, when I got to college, it wasn't until I got to the HBCU that I was taught to break free from that mindset. They made us read a book called The Lies My Teacher Told Me, where I actually was taught about, how Columbus didn't found anything. He didn't, there was nothing that man founded, but we celebrated him every year in our education system. And, so for me to break free of that, and then for me to go into the media space and have to break free of how I was taught to be in a media space as well, I wanted to show people that as like, hey, you can be unchained. You can still do the work and still be okay. It doesn't matter how it's packaged. If you're doing it, if you're doing the right thing, it'll all fall together. It'll all come in line. And it's going to be, for some people, considered radical. And
it's not radical at all. It's not radical. It's not.
Dwayne got shot. Now see, Dwayne was just a knucklehead, but still with his cousin. And I'll be wrong if I ain't help him when it's beef, he gon' rush him. He said, listen, homie, ain't no time for discussion. Motherfucking pressure's rising and it's boiling to bust him. So if you with me, then you with me. Make a decision. Got the bait, you be the hook, cause we's about to go fishing. Now listen, when it's on, then it's on for show. Kiss my girl up on the head and in the wind up the dough. Stood up in the dog.
Da ba da ba da ba yeah. Da ba da ba 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 da ba 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 yeah. Set the ba da ba da. Boy yeah. Sunlight that always stays. dinner by the waterway. It's that sweet life. Raise your cross. Made some dude crack a smile. He asked if I could stay a while. I'm living that high life. Time to catch a flight, but you can make me go. Unlocking all the memories of my new home. Ventilated echoes playing to and fro, back and forth, yeah. Caught some kids dancing in the alleyway. Crazy how the melodies began to play, yeah. Tell me how you feel it when you hear the lyric, yeah. My heart's in Stockholm. Now I never wanna go home. I left my heart in Stockholm. Now I never wanna go home. Shopping the girl, I brought a girl on my Vespa. She said I already told ya, yeah. I never dated a black guy. I said you're brown yourself. Let me offer help. Come on inside, where everybody knows your name. Everybody knows your name. Time to catch a flight, but you can make me go. Unlocking all the memories of my new home. Ventilated echoes playing to and fro, back and forth, yeah. Caught some kids dancing in the alleyway. Crazy how the melodies began to play, yeah. Tell me how you feel it when you hear the lyric, yeah. My heart's in Stockholm. Now I never wanna go home. I left my heart in Stockholm. Now I never wanna go home. Separate again. Sunlight that always stays in and by the waterway. It's that sweet life, sweet life, sweet life. I never wanna go home, go home. I'm living in Stockholm, Stockholm. I never wanna go home, go home. Living in Stockholm, Stockholm. I never wanna go home, go home. I'm living in Stockholm, Stockholm. Yeah. Shut up, I got the bed, the bed. Never get good, never get good, got.